Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at a piece by the digital illustrator Rachel Bradley. And in this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about AI generative art. We're going to talk about the divine natural world, and then we're also going to talk about an upcoming novel called The Sum of Our Deeds. So let's jump right into it. So whenever we first see this work, I notice this portraiture format here, and it's quite interesting. Of course, you're set face to face with this goddess here. So there is this kind of sense of intimacy or even confrontation face to face there. Definitely not a negative confrontation, more like a kind of an intimate, very close visual experience there. And it's quite interesting because normally we would expect that to be kind of set in the middle here if it were to be, say, a traditional portraiture. But we see how it's set off the center. And that offset is really interesting because it kind of draws the viewer in, and it almost forces the viewer to interact with the piece a bit deeper, to scan the eye more towards the left, and then and as a result, the negative space created over here kind of look back and forth throughout the digital canvas. So it does bring the viewer in quite masterfully at that. And so we see colors within this work, mainly a kind of golden brown. Of course, we have the skin tones, and then we have that green as well. So the main thing I see is that golden brown and that green is that dual set there. And of course, those really create the foundation of the color palette. Definitely energetic with that gold in there. The gold is likely going to be that first thing that you're drawn towards. Of course, I talked about the portraiture first, but that first thing that draws your attention is that golden nimbus or halo in the ascendant region there. And of course, that is emphasized through this light on dark contrast, very masterful one at that. It really draws your attention, of course, and emphasizes the form of our subject with that backing, as well as her, say, skin tones and her little highlights near at the bottom. Those all really draw your attention and define our subject quite well. And so we also see a sense of flow within the work at hand. Of course, the highlights of her hair kind of have that constant curving form. And whenever we see these constant curves, that really does imply a sense of motion. There is, of course, an inescapable sense of motion and life within this work. That's incredibly important to note, especially whenever we're talking about, say, the natural world. And so, like I said, we have that flow within the work, and then there's also these natural motifs, and then also very literal depictions of nature as well. See, these are the much more literal depictions, very large flowers, and then up, say, in the higher regions, we have a bit more natural motifs, not direct depictions, but those definitely work in tandem alongside each other there. And so we're looking at a subject here that's actually a character from the upcoming novel, The Sum of Our Deeds. And from what I can gather so far, The Sum of Our Deeds is a fantasy novel. And of course, with the title inherently, we are feeling themes of, say, morality, themes of the hero, and themes of the hero, everything in between. So that's really interesting. I'm very excited for that. It's actually an upcoming novel. And so our subject here, I believe it's Xerescades, not 100% sure, but regardless, you do see it up there, Xerescades there. And so we have a note from the artist about this scene here and what this meaning to depict. So, quote, "The corporal goddess of my novel, The Sum of Our Deeds," so that's who this is here, "no one has ever heard her speak, but she inhabits the grand organic temple of Minaya. Mostly in slumber, she sometimes wakes to visit the enormous tree in the center of the temple, where she will pass hours in silence before returning to her rest." So that's who we're looking at here, this Xerescades, I believe it's called. Not 100% sure. Sorry if I butchered that, but we do have it there if you guys want to reference there. And so, with that, we do have these themes of what I like to call the divine natural world, or I believe it's Gaia. Not 100% sure, but it definitely is that kind of a personified form of Earth or the natural world here. And this is displayed quite stunningly. Of course, we have those natural motifs all throughout there. We also have literal natural representations, and it almost feels like it's sprouting from her, as if she's almost fueling the rise. Of course, there is this sense of tension and release that comes from the kind of blossoming dress that she's wearing there. And so all of those, of course, add to that sense of motion, but it also denotes these extreme degrees of divinity. And one of the other things that's very literal there is The golden nimbus. And the golden nimbus is what we talked about just barely here in the beginning, this large disk here. And so in modern times, we would normally see that as a three-dimensional halo. So instead of that, we see the much more traditional depiction of the halo, which is known as the nimbus or the flat disk or the sun disk. And so with that in mind, the golden nimbus really denotes the degrees of divinity to the densest degree possible. Of course, it is kind of the chosen one who emits the light and the energy of the sun. It's definitely divine, definitely the light versus dark themes type of here, but it just floods the spatial composition with that good and that light energy there. So it's very, very immersive, very divine, and of course it is tied to the natural world. And the natural world is incredibly sacred, incredibly spiritual, and incredibly divine, especially in the way that it births consciousness and the kind of natural cycle of rebirth that we always see throughout, day in and day out. We are creatures of nature, by design, and we can't destroy nature without destroying ourselves by definition. And so, the goddess here of course, the goddess of nature, very, very important. And it is really kind of the epitome of Mother Nature in its personified form. And Mother Nature, of course, it is the source of all light, but it is also the floods and the catastrophe as well. Mother Nature does have that dual element. But within this work here, we see the good and the light of Mother Nature in its purest form. Just a sacred visual experience here, and it's absolutely stunning. I just love this piece. And of course, so we haven't mentioned this yet in the beginning, we did just a little bit, but this piece was actually a mixed media work using AI generative art. So this was generated in an AI program, and then there were some edits after the fact. There's actually a YouTube video of her creating this piece if you guys are interested. Once again, the artist is Rachel Bradley, so if you guys go up there and just search her YouTube channel, you can actually see how this work was created, and she even narrates over it. It's a really nice video. So with that in mind, we see kind of these themes of the AI generative, but the AI generative fantasy. So I like to call that kind of fantasy generative, or maybe AI fantasy. I haven't quite decided on the name yet, but we do see a lot of fantasy works coming from the AI generative medium of artistic expression. And this is yet another testament to that. Of course, we see just how amazing it is to use AI, say, as like a first rendition, and then to create on top of that, especially as a career or a very talented digital artist. Of course, you see just the amazing results here. So just a very stunning piece. I hope you guys enjoyed. Go Rachel Bradley other work. She's doing actually a lot of characters from the Sum of Our Deeds. So if you guys want to check that out, it'd be really, really cool to see some other characters. Get to know the novel a bit deeper as we build up to the release of it. Incredibly exciting. Hope you guys enjoyed. We talked a little bit about AI generative art, talked about the divine natural world, and then we also talked about the upcoming novel, The Sum of Our Deeds. Hope you guys enjoyed. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.